Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the MRPS board meeting. We're calling the meeting to order at 6:30. And the first order of business is public comment, a chance for members of the public to share what's on their mind about our district. It looks like we've got someone in the room to provide public comment. And then if we have anyone online, we just ask that you raise your hand and we'll get you on the list. Yeah. Great.
Hey folks, you Mike and Barry, Montpelier resident, long time no see, sorry about that. Busy coaching. Couple quick things. I was jokingly gonna say that I've saved up 8 months worth of stuff to get to you this evening, but that's not fair. I want you guys to be out here midnight. First off, a big thank you. Really grateful that the board still kept some funds for track renovation and safety. If you haven't been out there, please go take a look. We were talking about it just a little while ago with Tim. It's coming along, not as quickly as they promised and not as quickly as I would like, but it is happening. I desperately hope that the paving is going to happen soon and we can really get there before it gets too late in the season. But I think we're coming along towards safe, functional field facilities. The throwing center is already looking awesome, and we just got to dial in the high jump and long jump and pole vault. And so just gratitude. And it's a big lift, and it's our biggest spring sport, whether individually in the high school, middle school, or separately. It's about 160 MRPS students. It's likely to keep growing. So just again, great appreciation. I'm likely to try to get a few additional quotes and work with Tom to see if there are other things, if there were a little bit of additional funds potentially available. Not any pie in the sky stuff, not any $2 million, though obviously I'd love for that, but we don't live in that world anymore. But maybe a few thousand that can maybe get us to even live better. So just putting that out there. I did hear from a newspaper article, hope it's not too erroneous, that you guys are thinking about what to do with some additional funds. I've read through those reports the past few years. Please work on the schools that are most outside of the floodplain. UES seems like a school that even if we merged, we would still keep that school open. So work on those windows, work on the roofs. Like some of those reports look the same year after year because we haven't hit those big ticket items. Let's do them. If you've got the cash on hand, let's make these buildings safe and functional for a long term. Especially UES seems like a really intelligent building to make investments in. Middle school, maybe invest, and then eventually we get rid of it. High school, we still have a lot to think about from the floodplain standpoint, but I suspect we'll always keep the grounds, whether it's a bigger district or not. Who knows about the building? CVCC, I'm excited to hear about them sharing tonight. I think $140 million price tag freaks a lot of us out. I really want to know about the alternatives analysis. I know Burlington has their tech center in multiple locations. I know we've got many buildings that aren't fully utilized within our Washington County area. Is there potential to do graphic arts at Montpelier or something else at U32, keep auto shop at Barry, figure it all out for less than $149 million? I'm no expert. It could all be dialed in. I'm looking forward to hearing what they're having to say, but I know that price tag has a lot of folks concerned. And that's it for me. And just thanks for all being here. I know it's a ton of work and we appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Do we have anyone online who would like to offer public comment? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll move forward to the consent agenda, which is generally a list of meeting minutes and other rather pro forma items for the board to just be able to get through all in one chunk. And if any board member would like to pull anything off the consent agenda for discussion, you certainly can. And that said, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? All right, thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Is there any discussion? I'm looking at the screen to see if Lynn has her hand raised. Nope. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, so moved. Or so approved. a couple of quick announcements before we jump into our first order of business. The first is that Jill, Libby, and I met with our counterparts at Washington Central District this morning as a follow-up to both boards receiving the report from the feasibility study. And just the headline there is that it seems both parties agree that it seems to make sense to wait and see what the legislature is going to decide around consolidation before we would make any formal or official moves ourselves, because we wouldn't want to, doesn't make sense to duplicate work, and we wouldn't want to do something that could potentially get pulled back by a decision that the legislature was making, will make, which, you know, we don't, none of us has a crystal ball to know what they're going to do. So it seems like waiting and seeing before doing anything official or formal makes sense. And that said, anything that we can do to continue ongoing current partnerships with between the two districts, we're certainly going to continue doing. And then if there are opportunities for any informal ways for our communities to, you know, learn more about each other, we're going to take advantage of those. So one example that we might do is if we were to hold a community forum, or they are to hold a community forum, say around what the legislature is doing, maybe we invite members from all of the towns in both districts to join that community forum. So we're learning these things together. So that's just one example of something we might do informally, but no formal or official moves as of right now. Any questions on that? Okay. And then one other announcement is at the last board meeting, is that when we had the facilities report? At the last board meeting, after Libby and Tom presented the facilities report, we had a discussion about how to engage the public around making this decision about what to do with the money. And if folks recall, there were the four like kind of big directions that Libby and Tom said we might go. Could you pull those up just for a quick reminder? And then we had a conversation about what things we could do to engage the public. Libby, Jill, and I chatted after hearing the feedback from the board members who were in attendance, and we thought that the best thing that made sense is at either our November 1st or 2nd meeting in November, I can't remember which one, but at our November board meeting is when we'll have the in-depth conversation about which one of these directions will go. And at that meeting, we will open up a second round of public comment so that members of the public who want to weigh in on these options or whatever else, you know, maybe there's another option that we come up with between now and then, they can, after being part of, like, hearing and being part of that conversation and hearing the context that goes into these options. So that's the plan for how to make sure we can get some kind of input from the public in order to help us make the decision. And before we move off of this, I did want to ask if there are board members who are interested in option number 1, because we need to ask our new chief finance officer to prepare something for us in order to have even more information to, like, actually make that decision. Option number 1, which is to pay down bond debt. And then if not, we'll stick more with options 2 through 4. And we will ask Libby, Tom, and the operations committee to prepare more in-depth presentations of what those options would look like to help us make the decision. So just at first glance, I'm curious to know if any board members are interested in number 1.
A little bit more, but I don't think it's something we were planning on talking about at our operations committee meeting this Friday. And I think I'm interested in sort of high level understanding, not some kind of like in-depth analysis, just sort of what the ongoing savings would look like, just
Okay.
to have a rough guide. So, and just to better understand our, the characteristics of our debt right now.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it needs to be in this whole thing, I don't know. It may be more like a weedy operations committee thing. Happy to, not intending to make a ton more work on this.
Well, and if something comes from that, maybe that could be something that the operations committee brings to our next board meeting to say, at the high level, this is what that could look like.
Yeah.
And then the whole board would have that information. Okay, I think that's a good plan for number one, and then we'll also look to Libby, Tom, and you all to come up with more detailed versions of 2, 3, and 4, so that we have more information to work with, and we can talk a little bit more offline about what that would look like.
Yeah, and in terms of like how we frame savings, I would like to not see it be like dollar for dollar in terms of like, you can pay 200,000 for windows, or we can put 200,000 in the bank. It'd be like we could put 200,000 in the bank, not do the windows now, but the windows are going to be done at some point. So it might be 300,000
Right,
in 3 years.
yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Okay. So those were that's just the announcements to keep a few things moving along. So now I'd love to invite Sylvia, and is Peggy Sue, are you going to join Sylvia at the mic? Great, we get both of you. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, for today.
You're gonna
Let's
start.
start connect.
Yeah.
I wondered what that jar of pencils was for.
We have to like introduce ourselves or anything for the record.
Yes. We'd love it if you
Go
would,
ahead,
please.
you start. You are the ML queen here.
My name is Sylvia Fagan and I'm a multilingual learning teacher in the district. This is my 22nd year in this district.
I'm Peggy Sue Van Ostren, a director of student support services. This is my 4th year. in district. Not even close.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Both
for
of you.
thanks for the invitation. So we've prepared a presentation and I want to start with a little activity just to get your minds thinking a little bit about language and the ways that language works for our students who are here in our district. So I'm going to give each table. Yeah, you could scoot a little bit. Yeah, each pair of folks is going to get a card and it has 2 words on it. Front and back, everybody's card is different. And your task is to generate all the meanings of this word that you can, all the contexts that you might hear it or use it, many as you can. And then we'll talk more about it. So, Steve needs a pencil. Your team.
Not a competition, Libby, just to be fair.
Right.
I can just see you already.
Actually talking about our color
Okay,
picture,
I just want to make
although
sure.
I was thinking about Jill's word.
I'm good sitting.
Wait, Scott and, hey Libby, Scott and Tim might need a pencil. Need a writing pencil. There we go.
So I'll give you like 3 minutes to do this. This is just a little taste, so. And I don't want it to get bloody or anything.
Goodness.
Well, that was totally
Okay,
Libby.
Sylvia, could you, so it's all of the definitions?
The word, the contexts, the meanings that word that you might have. So for example, I don't even want to give you an example. Okay, all of the contexts, meanings that word might have. Where might you hear it? How might you use it? When might you speak it? When might you see it?
How long?
Oh, just like.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
The little box with the color.
Yes,
Oh,
Jill.
good question.
Does
Yes.
everybody have the same word?
No,
And
not a
they're
competition.
they're front and back. So when you've done a few, turn your card over and do the other side. No prizes.
Prizes the knowledge and the experience. I know.
Right, if you haven't turned your card over, now's your moment.
Okay.
Such a good teacher, Lauren.
If there were winners.
Not a competition, but it could.
Right. She can't resist. Cannot
Everything is,
resist.
Jim, everything is.
Students like the students.
They do like to win. All right, so I'll pause you here. You could certainly keep going. We're going to refer back to this activity later, but for now, I would just love to hear each pair pick one word and share a few meanings that you came up with. So could we start down here?
Uh-oh. We had table,
Table, okay, what you got?
something that you eat on. It's also in motion under Robert's rules. A way of organizing information in rows and columns. Like a place for discussion, like bring something to the table. A rock formation.
Hmm. Great, thank you.
So did I hear 4?
We had.
Come on now, you trying to short us?
I'm just curious.
Uh,
I'm just curious about the number that you had. Okay, so we had the word prime. We discussed prime numbers, Amazon Prime, a type of steak. The prime, the pump, like first rate. The only or prioritized is in like prime suspect. A banking term, prime sub mortgage, and my brilliant partner said Maximus Prime, the transformer.
Wow. Hey.
Exactly, Jim, exactly. For that.
All right, thank you.
We were board. So we thought board of wood, school board, on board and room and board.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, we had light, which was like the emanation of, yeah. What's in this room, actual physical light, like a. Like what you put on a dresser, lacking much weight. Level of seriousness, like to make light of something, a gentle, like a light touch. And not serious, but in a good way, like that was a light movie.
Thank you. So we'll refer back to this later, but one thing I would like you to just note is that in every word, there were some examples of concrete things and then also some abstract figurative language that you couldn't teach or demonstrate by showing a picture of a thing necessarily. So I just want to point that out, and we'll come back to that in a little bit.
Okay. All right. So before we get into this too much, we do want to just take a minute and kind of acknowledge where we are in the world right now and in our country. And just that there is a heightened level of concern about our students and their safety of their families. And so that has impacted how our ML teachers are working. with families and students. Couple examples here. Last spring, we did not have an ML family night, which we had the year before, and it was a really great experience. And that didn't feel like something that families were comfortable or that we wanted to do, and certainly has been a lot more caution about things like being in a community with groups of these students and that kind of stuff. So tonight, we're not sharing pictures or doing any the specifics and the celebrations that we may have done in other times. We're not going to do right now. So just have that acknowledgement. All right. So I'm going to talk about the kind of technical stuff, and then I'm going to let Sylvia do all the fun stuff because she's the one that does this every day. So starting with just really helping folks understand who our multilingual learners are. So these are our students who need support with academic language, social language, and or cultural acclimation due to their first language being something other than English, due to their parents' first language being other than English. Families may have immigrated in their lifetime, so they may have been born here, but the likelihood that their family is speaking another language other than English at home is higher. We're talking about students that were adopted at a young age and might have had some language development before coming to the United States. Any student that has had significant exposure to another language between the ages of 0 and 5. We want to make sure that we are really clear that we are celebrating these learners. These learners used to be called English as a second language or English language learners or other things like that, that really focused on a deficit, lacking of English, as opposed to acknowledging all of the strengths and being really clear about the strengths base. I wish I was multilingual. These students and their families really bring a lot of richness to our community through their experiences, their values, their traditions, skills, stories, and strengths. And then we just have a whole lot of words here that describe them. So really, the work that we do with these families and these students is really thinking about the strengths and all of the stuff that they are sharing with us and bringing to us, and really trying to focus on their strength as we work with them to access education in our schools. We currently have about 60 students in our district that have this designation. And there's a list here of some of the countries that their families come from. Oh, I wondered why that was there. Never noticed it generally. Okay. So there's a list here of some of the countries: Afghanistan, Bosnia, Brazil, Canada, China, Colombia, El Salvador, France, Haiti, India, Mexico, Nicaragua, Peru, Taiwan, Russia, Rwanda, Uganda, Ukraine, Venezuela, Vietnam, and the United States. And we have 3 full-time teachers, multilingual teachers in our district, and every year their assignments kind of vary based on where the students are. So they are not, this year, for example, Sylvia is full-time at the high school because there's more of a population here than there has been in previous years. So every year we are looking at where the students are, where the needs are, and then these amazing women go with them. When any new student enrolls in our district, there's a home language survey that is part of the registration paperwork. And anytime that comes back with indicating that there's a language other than English that is spoken in the home, that gets sent to our ML teachers, who then work with the families to make a determination about whether or not a screening needs to happen. Based on those conversations, if a screening needs to happen, the teachers administer a screener looking at listening, speaking, reading, and writing in English. And then based on the results of that screener, decisions are made about whether or not a student requires services. And if they do, then an individual instruction plan is developed. In addition to that, all of the students, so we have some students that have this designation, but may be on what's called monitoring, which means that they are to the place where they don't necessarily require direct services, but we still need to monitor and make sure that their English is developing. And so there's a test every year that we have to administer starting in January for those students that look at those 4 areas of language development. And then those part of the determination around scores for or supports for students is based on that assessment, as well as when students are ready to exit from services. So there's criteria put out by the state that when a student gets to a certain level, they no longer require multilingual services. So we talked about last year sharing those results, and then we said, oh, we probably need to talk about what this test is before we just bring results that don't necessarily have any connection for folks.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Students move to monitor status once they've gotten the proficient on that test. Yeah, so once they take the test, once they beat the score on the test, then they're monitored
For a couple of years, right?
for 2 years.
And then the last part that I'm going to share before Sylvia gets to talk about all the fun stuff is in the last few years, we have done a lot of work as a district around accessibility for our non-English speaking families to make sure that the information that we're putting out is accessible in home languages for families. So I feel like every week there's some conversation about translation and interpretation procedures, but we have gotten a lot in place around that. We've done extensive training with staff so that hopefully we're moving from this being something that is a Sylvia, Hannah, and Laura thing to everyone. We're definitely seeing more staff realizing now that when they're sending out stuff, they're translating it and making sure that families can access things. We have some different tools that we have invested in to make sure that newsletters that are coming out from schools are able to be easily accessed and translated. And then Mike's also done some work in finding tools to support teachers around helping students access curriculum. So there's this cool thing called Nearpod where it has the ability, so a teacher can make their PowerPoint in this Nearpod thing, and then a student can look at it and get it in their language while the teacher is showing it in English. So part of what research shows that we need to do is while we're teaching English, also make sure that they can access content in a language that they understand so that we are making sure that that's happening. And so we have some teachers that are starting to really dig into that, and we're hoping to expand that. We have a district-wide calendar for holidays and holy days so that we can really be aware and thoughtful about when we're planning special events. So making sure that that's not interfering with those days for students. And then in the last year and a half, 2 years, we had to update something that's called the LAU plan, which is our district's plan around students that are multilingual learners. So the last time we updated it was 2008. And so a couple of years ago, the state came out with a new format that they wanted us to do. And so there was a lot of work done with a lot of different teams to make sure that we have that updated now. And so that is linked in here. And when we did that, I just made a note that we made sure that was in alignment with our strategic anti-racism and equity plan. So that I think that has been a big focus in the last couple of years is how do we make sure that what we are doing is accessible to all of our families, and that we're learning strategies about what makes things easier to translate, what are the things that make it challenging to translate, and that kind of stuff. So Anna has helped a lot with those procedures and exploring different options for us, and it feels like we're in a pretty good place around that. Yes. All right, now it's you.
Okay. Well, I do want to mention Anna and Mike and Peggy Sue as just being really supporters of this work in the last few years, and really appreciative of that. It really has become much more of a district-wide team to serve these students, which has been really great. So as I mentioned, I've been here a while, and we've had some changes over the years, as is always the case. And I'd say in about the last 5 years, our population has shifted pretty dramatically. Previous to that, a fair number of our students, certainly a majority of the students we got in our district, came to us with prior formal schooling. They had been to school in their country of origin, a school in a model that was somewhat similar to school in North America. And so there was a
somewhat easy transition into doing school that was sort of the same way with literacy that was similar level to doing school in the United States. In the last 5 years, our population has really shifted, and we're getting a lot more students who don't have formal education or have very limited or interrupted formal education in their home language. We're seeing a lot more students who come to us without literacy, who don't read or write in their first language, and who maybe went to school in a very sporadic way based on a variety of reasons in their country of origin. There's a whole field of research around this called SLIFE, students with limited or interrupted formal education. So we have plenty of resources to support, knowledge resources to support these students, but it has made a big change in our work as multilingual learner teachers. One thing for sure is that there's a lot more need to teach how to do school. Just how is it that we do school? What does it mean to be a learner? Students are coming without the identity of a learner that kids develop when they start in kindergarten and come all the way up where this is what school is and this is what learning is and it feels good. So needing to build that learner identity for older students is something that's a little bit newer. Certainly more need for professional development for our classroom and content teachers, how to modify and accommodate their classroom instruction so that it is more accessible for students who are learning English at the same time they are learning content. Definitely some increased need for family support in navigating the school system. Families, perhaps the parents didn't go to school at all, so are just really not familiar with what a formal school system looks like, or came from a place where, for a variety of reasons, families didn't interact very much with the school. And sometimes that's because teachers were so revered that a parent would never think to question or wonder about what a teacher was doing. It was like, you're going to school, we trust you, and we won't come to school because that would be like stepping on your toes as educators. And sometimes it's just because that's what was not what was done. So really incorporating families and helping families learn the ways in which we expect parent involvement and how they can do that. And sometimes that's very exciting for families, and sometimes they may have a lot of other responsibilities, and that might feel like a lot. Certainly that's not limited to our multilingual learners. I think I mentioned before that we're seeing families and students who don't read in any language. And so when we think about how much information we send out from our schools in a written form, that is a big deal. Find ways to make that information accessible for these families. And we've been using our translation service or interpretation service quite a lot for phone calls to really have conversations with families so that we can understand what their needs and desires are, and they can tell us about their kids, and we can tell them about what we're doing. And then I just noted that right now about half of our service caseload is students from Afghanistan who speak either Pashto or Dari, the two main languages of Afghanistan. And that is a country in which not everybody is literate. And so we're learning a lot about using those interpretation services to build relationships with these families. Okay. Yeah. Right. So what kind of instructional support do these students need? When we think about academic language, there is a real depth to academic language that can be really challenging to learn. When we think about academic language, we're really almost always we're assuming literacy, that there's the ability to read and use visual word-based information to get knowledge. So that's a bedrock assumption in our school system past the age of about 7. So that can be really tricky. And if you've ever traveled or tried to learn a language, you know that it's all vocabulary. Every word is a vocabulary word. The word "the" is a vocabulary word, just like the word chlorophyll is a vocabulary word. And so it's a huge cognitive load on our young people to just try to be holding and navigating all of that new language. A lot of what we do is much more so with each passing year. requires prerequisite background knowledge that is often culturally based that our students may not have if they grew up in a different context. So building that background knowledge at the same time we're teaching the content. If you think back to the cards, the vocabulary activity that we did, you notice that there were some concrete nouns, some concrete words, things that you could point to and say, that is a board, that is a table. And then how would you explain to somebody what it means to be above board, right? And so there's concrete, there's increasingly abstract concepts as we move up in the curriculum with decreasing context. And the research has been pretty stable since I went to grad school, that 5 to 7 years is really needed for full academic proficiency and 5 to 7 years of direct instruction. And that's going to vary obviously with the background of the student and their previous schooling and the grade level. It's going to vary, but those numbers have really stayed consistent in my tenure as a professional here. I just wanted to show you this as another example of the abstraction of language. This is two types of language that we talk about in the field. The top part of the iceberg above the water is what we call basic interpersonal communication skills. And that is language that is context embedded and concrete. And so that by concrete, I mean, it's based on a specific activity or item. This is what we hear students using on the playground, in the cafeteria, at the locker, in the locker room. And we might listen to a student like, wow, they're really fluent. Like they just really picked up English. Listen to them. They can get their lunch and they can talk to their friends and they're playing soccer and they're really navigating school. Great. And then there's this other kind of language, which we refer to as cognitive academic language proficiency. And that's the part under the water, the iceberg. And this is language that is often very abstract and context reduced. So if you're thinking about your chemistry class, your algebra class, language that there isn't something necessarily right away to touch. And there's potentially no easy background knowledge. There is background knowledge, but there's no easy visual example to point to. And this is the language that we're talking about can take 5 to 7 years to learn because it can be so context specific, so abstract, and require so much previous information to be able to understand that. So that's really what we're talking about. And that's what we are definitely working with kids on their social language, but we're really working with kids on this academic. Looking at the clock. And I would just imagine you to think about one of the words on your note card there and imagine that you only knew one meaning of that word. And then you took that meaning into a different context. Would it help you? Would your knowledge of that one word help you or not? If this was a table and you walked into chemistry class and she said, okay, today we're doing the periodic table of the elements. Hey, I know what a table is. This is great. I know all about tables. I'm going to ace this today. And then she starts talking about, I don't even know what, covalent bonds or something. I have, what are those called? Electrons. But I knew what a table is. I know what a table is. Why doesn't this make any sense? So I hope that just gives you a small idea of what we're talking about when we talk about building academic language. I want to finish by sharing a quote that a father shared with us several years ago when he enrolled his daughter at Union. And we asked families, and tell us about your kid. And he told us about his kid, and he said, with time, she's going to do wonders here. And I mean, I still get a little choked up when I say that and think of it, because the faith this person had in their child and the knowledge that she's going to do wonders, and she truly is. And it's time, and it's also the support that we provide the students. We provide the language instruction, we provide math and literacy support, counseling and social work for whatever might have come before. We build family relationships, we build community connections, and sometimes special education is appropriate. So all of these services are available to our students. And with time, they do wonders here. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you. And Yes, do we answer questions? If
We
there are
can if
questions?
they are,
Yes,
sure.
Okay, so anyway,
Sure.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much, not only for being here, but for everything that you do for these kids and their families.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Do members of the board have any questions for Sylvia or Peggy Sue?
I guess one, kind of given some of the recent changes in demographics, I mean, do you feel we have enough resources to meet all the new students?
Well, I think, I let Peggy Sue speak to this for sure too. I think we're always balancing all the resources we have, right? And I'm curious, you know, what rises up to you?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we've tried to do, hopefully with some success in the last couple of years, is spread the wealth of responsibility for here. So I think that Laura and Hannah and Sylvia were kind of holding a lot of all these pieces, right? So they were the people that were doing the translate, people were coming to for translations and the community contact and working with the teachers and doing. And so we have been trying to work with the greater staff to think about like this, you know, like our registrars now can figure out how to translate things, right? Like, so that it's not all just on these three humans who are teachers and we want them to spend their time teaching. And so I would say we're getting better at that and there's always room for improvement. You know, I think if we had more resources, for sure, we could put them to work and that they would be busy. Yeah, so I, you know, yeah, yes, and yeah.
Well, maybe a more pointed follow-up is there, we have 60 or 50, I can't remember the number now.
About 60.
About 60
Yeah.
kids, so that's about, just the straight up ratio is 20 students per multilingual teacher that we have. Is there any kind of best practice for, let's say we got another 20 students next year? Or does that mean we should have 4? Or is there, I don't know, do we have a kind of formula like that, or it's just doesn't work that way?
There is research that says what an appropriate caseload is, and we're far below that research number right now. However, I think it's also context dependent.
Yeah, I think, you know, some of it, right, is if it's a student that's never come with, or it's coming with no formal language, right, then the needs might be very different than someone who has one parent that speaks another language in the house, right? And so, you know, yeah. I think that I think that there are recommendations based on the score. You can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but based on the scores of a certain amount of time, they should be accessing an ML teacher
Right,
every week, right?
right, yeah. So it's
Okay, that makes sense.
like minutes per week or hours per week kind of formula.
But I do think it's like right now, we have, Hannah is going between Union and the middle school. So she, you know, so that gets a little tricky and just trying to, you know, she's, I think, jogging back and forth some days because she's doing kindergarten and then she's over here doing 8th grade and,
Yeah.
you know, so, it's not a one person in each building kind of thing. And so I think some of that for sure makes it more challenging to feel connected to the school and feel like you're providing all the things that
Sure.
you want to provide. Yeah.
And I'll piggyback on that and say for the last few years, I've been the one going back and forth, and this year I'm here all the time. And I am, you know, in my prep periods, I'm always talking to other teachers about how to serve a student. They'll come to me and say, hey, about this kid, what about this? Or this kid, I'm trying to do this, or can you give me an idea here? So it's like, now that I'm here, there's suddenly constant collaboration. That there just wasn't the time for before, and that's in service of our students, definitely, constantly, so that's been really great. So like a little more wiggle room leaves the room for that kind of thing, which is builds the whole program, right? For everybody.
You all mentioned some of the tools that our staff have available to them, and I could imagine as technology is getting better and better, we're going to use those tools more. And I just wonder what sort of controls do we have that we like if you're using some sort of translation software like that, like what the fidelity is of the translations and I don't know if that's something that we're using currently, but just an example that came to my head.
So we have something, it's a weird name, but it's called DeepL. That is like a higher level translation software. So we have some of us, so like Mike and I, for example, have accounts for that. So when it's things like IEPs or things that are legal documents or where the context like that, and I don't know technology, but there's something in the technology of that like gets the context where Google Translate, for example, might not do that as much. So depending on how important the context is in some situations, then we do have the ability to do that. So like all of those things come through me, and then, well, Pashto goes to Mike because you have to do something with the other margin or something. I don't know. It's, I don't even try to do that. But that for sure, Mike is spending a lot of time looking at like AI stuff and technology, and we have to get privacy agreements for anything that would have student data and that kind of stuff. So, yes, we are definitely paying attention to that. Any other questions? Excellent.
You were mentioning a larger proportion of families from Afghanistan, and you're also mentioning in some situations, families may not have historical context for a lot of interaction with the school system. Are there community resources that serve as a in-between bridge that can help with some of those families and or communities that help those families establish communities so that they can more easily sort of engage with you and the school system?
Yeah, there's a great organization based in Montpelier called the Central Vermont Refugee Action Network, we ran. And they do a great job of matching up new families with volunteers who help them navigate school registration and sporting, sports registrations and how to get the soccer cleats and help folks get to parent conferences and that kind of thing. So they're a really great support, and we're fortunate to have them based in Montpelier. They support all of Washington County. What some larger districts have done and what we might do if we had the capacity are do things like parent, I think in Burlington, they call it Parent University. And they run these kind of weeknight classes on like, what's a parent teacher conference? How to sign up for sports, how to access your school social worker. And I don't know all the topics, but they do that kind of thing. And obviously their population is much different, but it's much different in terms of numbers, but not different in terms of needs. And I think that's the tricky part about being the size we are with about 60 kids is, it's way more kids than a district that has 3, but it's way less than a district that has 45%. And so our families still have all those needs of parent university kind of things. But given 60 kids and 1,000 students, an enrollment of 1,000, it can feel like, well, that's a lot of investment for not 45% of your student population. So when you ask about resources, I think, that sort of thing, we would love to have a community liaison who spoke Pashto, but there just isn't enough, even though we have these families, what feels like so many families with these needs, it's not a full-time job for anybody where it would be in Burlington, right? So it's a lot of the same needs, but not quite enough to get over that hump of, oh, that's a job. If that makes sense.
I know in healthcare, there are services that must be accessed. Are there services that you can get translators where you need them?
Oh,
Yeah,
sure, we
yeah,
have a phone
yeah,
service.
yeah.
We have a
They
phone
use a
service
phone
for
service,
interpretation.
yeah. And we have some interpreters that are in person for some
We've had some
languages.
Spanish,
Yeah,
yeah. So we have that access, but if it was a person who knew the family and knew the
Right.
community and could come in and talk to the teacher, and that would, like they haven't.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks,
very
everybody.
much for-
You can keep your pink card, but I would like your pencils back. Yeah, it's a good pencil.
Thanks.
All right,
All right, thanks,
moving
everyone.
right along, we've got Jody Emerson from the Central Vermont Career Center. Just, he's gonna join you? You can sit at the big table. We'd be happy to have you. Welcome back.
The adults.
Hello, Mr. Epstein.
We're no longer in the.
That's right.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for coming. I'm sure you have lots to say, but just we're very glad to have you here to help keep the Montpelier-Roxbury community well informed about these plans for the proposed new facility and what it would mean to vote on November 4th.
Scott's been keeping you up to date, I'm sure.
He's very helpful.
So I did send a presentation that's shorter than the last time I think I was here. So I did take some pieces out, and you still might not want all of what's in there. But I tried to tailor it a little bit because I've been following Coach Forum in Montpelier. So trying to tailor it a little bit to some of the questions that have come out there as well. So you can go ahead. You've seen the vision statement from the board, so you know why we've been pursuing this re-envisioning of Central Vermont Career Center. It's around our capacity, being able to provide more access for students. Looking at something that is near and dear to my heart since I transitioned to tech ed. This is year 5, so a little over 4 years ago, of bringing that full day in so that students are there all day. They're not transitioning back to their sending schools for an end of day class that may or may not be engaging for them, but also hard time of day after you've transitioned back. Looking at developing career academies or pathways, and this is, I've been doing a lot of research on this, and this is becoming kind of a passion of mine. And so how might we take in students in the 9th grade to explore our programs and then move into a 10th grade exploratory pathway that is maybe focused on health sciences, and then moving on up into the programs and beyond that. And so one of the things that we had been looking at with VTSU was how to get kids closer to a degree before they get out of high school. And so some of our programming was moving on that route. And then there's a need based on the talk of the legislature and some of the work that we just haven't been doing yet around how do we partner with our middle schools other than just sending our counselor out to talk with 7th or 8th graders and having 8th grade tours. How do we partner to build exploration opportunities for students to think about all the possibilities for their life in the future and where they might want to go and what's going to fit for them. And hopefully really setting up the steps to being able to access. Because there's some, CTE has gotten more rigorous with Perkins 5, which is a federal mandate. And so we're going to need to build in some more supports to get students ready for that. So thinking about access, you can go ahead to that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rush you, Mike. I just hit the.
No, that's fine. We've seen an overall increase in applications. And so you can see in the bottom ones there, you can see the total applicants and the accepted numbers. I don't have actual total applicants. So what you can see in FY25 and FY26, you can see there were 414 individual applicants in FY26, but we had 443 applications. That means some of those students applied multiple times. So we're trying to start to weed out that data. We accepted 228 and we started with 215. So some students actually withdrew over the summer before the program started. This one is hard to see in the room, but there was a question around the percentage of our students in our region and how many we get. And so we have about, this year we have about, or last year we had 9%. If you look at the 6 semester average, that we had just over 8%. And there are some regions where there's much higher amounts up to. I can't even.
11.7 on Watch Central. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Oh. So there's 16% over at Old Hollow.
Oh.
River Bend had 18%, River Valley down Springfield had 20% of the total sending school population. We're just under 10% of the total high school population for October of 24. So that's last year. And then, yeah, I put in the percentage of students from each of the sending schools, the percentage of their student body that is at our school. And so I think Montpelier is around 6%. So you can go on from. You're up.
Okay. So we did an extensive, so I'm Dave Epstein, I'm with Truex Collins. It's nice to see some of you from a previous project, and glad to meet the new people, introduce ourselves to the new people that we haven't met. So we're the architects for the project, and we're going to talk a little bit about the site search. Those are the purple are the sending towns. Then there's a hatched area in the center, which is where the focus towns where we looked, and we originally started with pretty broad selection criteria, 20 acres or more, municipal sewer nearby and water nearby, 3-phase electrical power, paved road, and you'll see that word nearby is in is orange. If you go to the next slide, you can see all the hits we got. We had 193 sites met all those criteria. So we had to narrow it down, and basically we removed the word nearby. We said it had to be on municipal water and sewer, had to be on a paved road, and that reduced the and it had to have 3-phase power. And so that reduced the number of sites quite a bit. Once we narrowed down the sites, Jody started calling all the different landowners, and then we finally got a hit in Graniteville. And some of the, there's been questions about some other sites. Why not U32? Why not Berrytown Industrial Park? Why not Airport Road? And why not Spalding High School? And this slide addresses that. We did look at U32. It didn't really fit, but it was very difficult to initiate any kind of co-location discussion. Jody went and met with the Berrytown Industrial Park the select board, and we basically said it's not available for public use. They want only for-profit companies up there. We found what we thought was a great site up on Airport Road. Turned out to be all wetlands, and so that was disappointing. And then at Spalding High School, we did a test fit there, and you can see there's a kind of a litany of issues that we came up. First of all, it didn't really fit. We would have to create a parking garage to get enough parking. There's flood zone issues and PCBs. It's just not enough room to expand the center, to increase the capacity and put the kind of create the kind of modern facility that the region needs. So
We don't know anything about PCBs. It just
Right.
hasn't been tested.
It hasn't been tested yet. Exactly.
Good clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to say there's PCBs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just hasn't been tested yet.
Yeah.
So we don't know if that would be a potential future concern.
And it really wasn't substantially, given all of the, especially with the parking garage, it turns out it wasn't really less expensive, or not that much that would motivate you to want to jump through all the hoops to try and make it work.
And that was sort of the same with the U32. It would displace some of the sports fields, because we basically put it on the up the middle school football, other soccer field. Place it on that hill and going over the edge of that hill towards the tennis courts. And so it would displace some of the parking, but definitely displace those sports fields. So you'd have to be buildings, maybe clearing some of the property that they have for that. And figuring out how could we use some of the spaces inside that building. That's where we were trying to save some money. So could we use their cafeteria? Could we use their auditorium and their gym? And that would require definitely adding on to the cafeteria. So would it require a little bit of renovation to U32 as well? But it seemed like something that we should explore, especially given conversations about a potential regional high school. And if that's the most likely location, which in my brain it is, doesn't mean it actually is, that we should just explore it. So we did do that. There were two. Stephen liked one of them, but not the other. So it's too close to his office.
There's, one of the things about, a CTE center is that everything wants to be on the ground floor.
Mm.
And you can't put everything on the ground floor. So it's 100,000 square foot footprint. This building. And there's a tremendous amount of outdoor activity. Every lab that's on the ground floor has a direct access, like an overhead door. And then the construction trades, the automotive have some pretty serious outdoor space needs. For car storage, for outdoor projects, for building projects, for equipment. So it's a very space intensive building type, which is why it didn't fit very well at Spalding High School and why it didn't fit at U32 and why ultimately the CVCC decided to pursue this site in Berrytown. So this is a just kind of a context plan showing the building footprint. It's in Graniteville at the intersection of Graniteville and Baptist Road. It's 27-acre site. It's really a beautiful site in terms of has views to the west. It has good access points to the east, and the building fits quite well on the site. There are wetlands. This is something we deal with in Vermont, but we're able to design around those, and the plan works quite well.
I think we press play.
Gonna work.
This is more of a fly through than a walk through, just,
It's okay if the sound doesn't work, I can walk you through it.
yeah.
So this is gonna, yes, fly you through the building. So this is if you are driving up to drop off your student at our center, and here's the entrance. And one of the things that's great about this entrance is you'll see you walk in, and on the right is the administrative offices, and on the left are the places where we get customers, so cosmetology and culinary arts. And then there's another set of doors before you walk into this part of the school. You'll remember that Jay was talking about that when we were here for the forum. We just turned around and went down the hallway, which is the Health and Natural Sciences hallway. So EMS, medical professions, animal science, natural resources we want to bring back, and early education. It's probably going to be, we can't call it human services. And that's a collaboration zone that we just walked through where those programs can collaborate together. So students in them. Up here is the exploratory section. So it would be the 9th and 10th grade programming, exploratory labs, flex labs. And these are where we're also anticipating that we would do a lot of our adult education because those labs are flexible. This space would be where students could eat lunch because the cafeteria is off under that stairway or what we're walking across now. It's a learning stair. It's where all of our full school activities could happen, presentations, etc. We walk by a business, IT, and digital media arts, and then we're going down the hallway that has all the construction trades. So there's an advanced manufacturing, which would be an addition. There's electrical building trades, plumbing and heating, and welding all in this section. And we would anticipate doubling electrical, plumbing and heating and building trades. And then we have at the very end is our transportation section, which is potentially diesel, and our automotive program, 1 or 2 of those, because those are the highest demand programs. So that's like the high speed fly through of that building. And then you look at it from above and you can see as it gets higher up, some of those yards where they're going to be able to work outside. And then you can also see the solar panels on the top, because it's meant to be a net zero building. Our programs won't be net zero, but the building itself should be.
Good job.
Well, do you know how many times
You practiced and to get it all in,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I've talked somewhat about this, but the career pathways we're gonna have 4 of them. The arts, business and hospitality pathway, the design, construction and manufacturing pathway, health and natural sciences pathway, and that transportation pathway. And so the 9th grade exploratory would be much similar to what we have for mostly 10th graders right now in exploring all of the programs, but they wouldn't be shadowing those programs. They would then seek one of those pathways that they could go into as a 10th grader. And they would get some of that safety training out of the way and tier 1 credentials and get some of those basics out of the way as they move into the programs that are beyond that. So that allows them to jump right in a lot faster into those other programs and go a little more in depth. Go ahead. So the building is 167,000 square feet, the concept design that you just did the speed fly through. The project budget that has been delivered to us was 149 million. You may remember that when we were first talking about it, we thought it was going to be 150 million to 200 million. So even though 149 million is a lot of money, we were super excited to come in under what our initial thoughts of it might be. And this includes everything moving forward. So it includes all the permits, all the contingencies, all the equipment that we don't move. It includes moving the equipment that we do move. And all the spaces, obviously, and having that granite base of the building and then lighter features up above. Any questions about taxes? I'm going to push towards Jake because he was such a wonderful resource to my business manager in helping just think through it and answering her questions. So thank you so much, Jake, for working with Michelle in that way. These estimates were made based on FY26 because people want to know what the impact is going to be. And the honest truth is we don't know. We don't know how your taxes are going to be impacted. We can only guess. We don't know if we're going to be in a foundation formula. We don't know how CTE funding will change, right? So based on current FY26 data, what we have right now, and just assuming that if we were starting to pay it this year and we took the 30 years worth of bond payments and we equalized them and just took 1 year's worth and added that on top, that's how these amounts came out. No income sensitivity figured in, thought of a $300,000 house. So that's some of the assumptions. And in the room, it's hard to see, but hopefully you've seen at least one of these images before.
Montpelier is the yellow in the middle. Roxbury is the third greenish. Oh, I see it.
Oh, thanks, Joy.
Okay.
So you can look at the bottom, the chart is there, breakdown of towns, and it goes from the $99 additional for that $300,000 home in Cabot up to the 420. I think it's in East Montpelier. And so the average of that is about $292 for a year if we were starting to pay it back this year with all those assumptions that set. Next one, Libby.
Tuition basis or is
It's
it?
it's basically on the tuition basis of taking out what is the 6 semester average for each sending school and then divvying out between those towns in that sending school.
Ultimately, it'll be based on what the level of pickup is per town.
Right.
Got it. Thanks.
This is based on the current percentages. The
Current 6
6 year.
semester average.
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
everything's based on where we are right now. as if we had to pay it back. If the bond is approved and we have to start paying back, it won't be paid back until the year we open the doors, which is FY 30. And so we cannot predict that, given all the uncertainties.
So I just kind of scenario, so say, you know, we get redistricting, which appears to be coming.
Mhm.
And say part of that redistricting is what is now Harwood merged with Stowe.
Yeah.
And, you know, and Morrisville. And suddenly they're one district and they're thinking about where they send their kids differently.
Mhm.
And like one of two things happens. Either they say, okay, our whole district now wants to go to this career center, which means that kids from Stowe and Morrisville and some towns that aren't on this list may want to access the career center. Or say, you know, towns that are on this list right now, like Waitsfield and Duxbury and Moortown. Say that we have a new district, they've got a different career center option that we like. So we want to go do that. But there's still 27 years to pay on this bond. And what if the people in that town say, we're not using this school anymore? Why should we be paying for it? Or you get a situation where suddenly the school is servicing all these kids from Stowe and Morristown. They say, well, we didn't vote to pay for it. We want to send our kids there, but we don't want to pay for it. What do we do?
I think that's a really good question, and I honestly cannot answer that.
Yeah.
I've made some assumptions that if there's redistricting, similar to what happened with Act 46, that the bond goes to the new district, whatever that is. And so then the question is I will not be an independent technical school district, right? So is that going to put the Center of Vermont Career Center in a district here with the regional, whatever the region becomes? Or are we going to be one CTE district across the state, which is what the Agency of Education is still promoting? They've put out some language again for this year for what that bill would look like. And then does it mean everybody across the state is now paying for it, which everybody across the state does to some degree anyways. But because we're now one statewide district, is everybody now contributing to that bond? That's
Which is how CTE centers were funded in the past.
Mhm.
Prior to 2007, the state funded 100% of it. So it's essentially everybody in the state. We don't have.
We don't know.
Yeah.
we don't know. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
we could make a lot of guesses, but I'm
Right.
sorry, I can't answer that question. You can go to the next slide. I think it's just all the assumptions that those rates were based on. And then the next. So one of the other questions is how much more is it going to cost when you add the staff and you add these other programs? And so Michelle, my business manager, said about 3 million more. We have a $5 million budget this year. If we were adding them this year and had all that stuff, it would be about $3 million more for the salary benefits and the program budgets for the facilities director, for all the pieces that we don't have, for the cafeteria staff, all the pieces that we don't have right now.
So you go from 5
From
million.
5
to 8
million, yeah,
Okay. And then the way that shakes out is based on 6 semester average tuition.
presuming that stays the same. And right now, they've also been talking about with the foundation formula that CTE students are weighted differently.
Right. I remember that part of the conversation from the spring. Okay.
It's complicated.
If that stays the same, then that new $3 million is, or that total $8 million is then we use the 6 semester average to figure out what each sending school is paying in tuition.
Right.
But if the foundation formula comes into effect, then we don't
We don't
pay
know. We haven't seen modeling for that yet.
what that looks like. Okay. Okay, so if the things stay the same, then in addition to the cost of the bond, does that mean that our overall budget goes up because tuition for that,
Yes.
yes, I'm just trying to follow all
Yep.
of the pieces of the math.
Yes,
So there would be the bond that tax rates would be paying for, plus we would have to figure out.
the bond would go through the tuition formula as well,
As well,
under our current formula.
right,
So
okay,
that expenditure would significantly increase.
right.
Correct.
And then on top of that would be this new, the new $3 million. So anyway, yes. So this, even though these are your best guesses for what
This
the
is best
bond
guesses for
impact
the
is.
bond
Right.
impact only,
Right.
right?
This rainbow chart doesn't include the
No,
the running cost of it.
Right.
Okay. All right, that's what I was trying to get at and we got there. So thank you.
Mhm.
Okay,
Next.
Increase, or would it, because you got more people, so there's more students that are spreading. So like per head tuition, is that expected to be like roughly the same or?
good question. How fast do we build up? And it takes a while. So if you start a new program, you don't see the students in the new program until you're 3 years in, right? To see that. So your tuition is higher first and then it can come potentially down a little bit, right? As you can see those 6 semester averages kind of pull into what is real.
The formula that we
That
currently
we
have.
In the current formula, yeah.
Which will most likely not
May not
be
be,
the
Right.
future formula.
If anyone has a crystal ball or even a magic 8 ball and think that it could
I
answer
think
it.
that's how the
kids have one.
decision is actually being made, so.
my kids have one of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The
Thank you
next,
more.
I think we just have the next steps on here.
Okay.
So there's a forum for the bond vote at the center next Tuesday. That's at 6 p.m. People are welcome online or in person there at Central Vermont Career Center. On the next night, it's not on here, but Washington Central is having their board meeting at East Montpelier Middle School or elementary school, and they have invited, I think, all their select boards from the communities and anyone else who wants to attend. So that's another opportunity. I'll be there. Twinfield board on the 14th. I will be at the East Montpelier transfer station on Saturday from 9 to noon, if people come with questions. And the Waitsfield one the following Saturday, the 11th, from 9 to noon. So look for the orange vest and I'll be handing out lawn signs if you want them and these pamphlets and trying to answer questions. If the bond vote will happen on November 4, the ballots will be commingled on November 6th. So we will know the outcome on November 6th. It is a simple majority. No one town is necessarily going to decide this. They might, but we won't know that. So simple majority. If it passes, then we'll start getting the design firmed up and get those permits. And then construction would start in March of 2027 and finish hopefully in May of 29 with the building opening the fall of 29. So that's kind of the project timeline. If it passes, if it doesn't, then the board's going to need to reconsider, like, do they try again? What is the feedback on this and where do we go next? I think it feels like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity because of all the things that are so unpredictable. And once we get folded into some new district, there's going to be a lot of work to create that new district and get that up and running and try to figure out what are the next steps for that new district. And this is going to go away because it will not be a focus.
I think there's another path, possibly. The new district could be like, what we need is a centralized high school that has,
Maybe.
it's possible.
Maybe. It
I
is
just don't want to be like,
Yes, it is possible.
we don't have the crystal
I
ball.
love
We don't
that.
even have the magic 8 ball. So
I love your optimism.
I do too.
And I think in general, there will probably be with redistricting a lot of new needs that will need to be assessed about buildings and co-location and
What other questions are there?
I remember in a previous career center meeting, one of the public comments was similar to what Jim had asked about. Like, I think that terminology was like, we should be thinking creative. Jim mentioned like, what are the alternatives? If I'm paraphrasing you correctly.
Yeah.
And I know that before I joined the board, I know that there were folks that were looking at some of those alternatives. Can you just speak to like the relative pros and cons to the alternatives or the creative thinking that people have been asking about?
Yeah, I don't think that we've fully explored what could happen in sending schools, and it depends. Like your example of digital media arts, it's a lot easier to place that program in a classroom. There are a lot of programs that can't, their lab space needs to be something other than a classroom. And so trying to figure that out, we are exploring the possibility of if we bring back human services or elementary, lower than elementary education. What does that look like? And East Montpelier has offered to host that. Should we open that program next year? And so just trying to think through what that would look like. I think some of the struggles that I talked to Jason Reed up at Burlington actually, and some of the struggles are he's never where he should be. Right, because it's all over the place. And maybe you had that when you were there, right? Like what that was like. There's been some different pieces that we've heard from. Sometimes we get different answers from the state depending on who's asking the question. And so when we were looking for where do we put our welding program before we were able to get that spot in the high school, I was told that we could not renovate a space or put equipment in, use CTE funds to put equipment in a space that didn't belong to a school. So the schools is the potential option, right? If there's the space for it, but not any of the empty spaces unless the owner of that space is willing to fit it up to what we need. And then we pay that rent or that piece. However, Burlington High School and Tech Center has been able to do it with a 40-year lease. Because I guess the assumption maybe is that all the equipment won't, it'll not have value at that point. So it feels like there's been some different answers. It was a struggle when we had a space off campus to be able to supervise it. When there was a sub needed, that was difficult, finding people. Moving people around doesn't happen the same way in a CTE center as it does in a high school where you might have multiple people in a department. We usually have a party of one or maybe two if we're lucky. So we're moving lab assistants all around. That would mean another lab assistant on that other site. It's background checks for if it's like a business. There was somebody in one of the front porch forum posts, or maybe it was an email, because I've gotten a lot of emails too, who is like, why can't you set up something at Cody Chevrolet for automotive and you set up something here? And so first off, how do we decide which private businesses we give this to and which we don't? How do we make sure that everyone is background checked? How do I supervise that space? How do we provide a sub or the other supports that are needed? So there's a lot, it's not impossible, but there are complicated factors. And then how do we transport all of the kids? I mean, it's hard enough to get all of them to our center in time for program to start. How do we transport kids from, okay, your buses are coming here, but then they're also going over here from those schools to get to this program, or they're going over here. Not impossible, but it would need a lot of collaboration and coordination.
What's gonna happen to Spalding buildings, if this moves forward?
They've hired a consultant and they've been talking about how they might use their buildings differently. I don't know where there are in that because I haven't been attending their board meetings. At one time, there was the thought of bringing the middle school down. There's also the potential, they recently built the C building for alternatives, Spalding Education Alternatives. And some of the stuff that they do there is sort of CTE related. And so if they choose to expand that because it doesn't have the capacity that they need for some of their students, they might choose to do that. So I think there are some different options available to them, and I'm not sure where they're headed right now.
Is there a possibility of keeping part of the program at Spalding and then building something to, expand for other parts of it?
It's the same dilemma as far as supervision and administration. But
I mean,
it's
2
possible,
sites
yes.
is like less of that than
Yeah.
10 sites.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not big for Jake. Sorry, Jake, put you on the spot. What would you say? I don't know. One of my major concerns is that if and when we're under a foundation formula and we only get a certain amount of money, and this would be a bill that we're required to pay, and it drastically increases from what we now pay. So what would that, and without the capacity to raise more taxes under a foundation formula significantly, am I right in worrying about a more limited pot for what turns out to be about 94% of our students? Or am I thinking about that wrong?
I've been trying to think of that kind of thing, the cost coming next. Because there'd be potentially a bigger district, possibly even organized around the career center. And like the flow of money and students, like they would be teaching more of the students, like twice as many as now. So, but I think big picture would be like that. You're right, it would be an added cost versus what's happening now in the present state, and it would squeeze other things if we were in a foundation formula. I think that is right.
Okay.
But I'm not totally sure.
I know, nobody is, because we don't know, right? We
Yeah.
don't know what we'd be under.
And also the legislature is contemplating, construction aid at some point. It's just that they are want us figure out how to get the money and what's the best way to spend it. So, it could be that it appears at some point.
Yeah, I actually applied for the CBEDC project priority list to try to get on that, and there's a federal grant that's available for Vermont, especially places that were hit with flooding in 23 and 24. And they reached out to me and said, you would be eligible for this, we think, because of the workforce development component of it. And so that grant has a cap of 50 million. And so our hope is that we could apply for that 50 million and get it. Not sure that we can, but at least we're going to keep looking for what are some other ways to pay for this. So yes, we want the bond approved so that we have permission to move forward, but we're not saying, oh, we got it, that's it. It's where else can we find money to support this? And so exploring, we looked at some tech centers in Maine and they had sponsorship from tool companies, for example. Is there a way that we can do that? I don't think Vermont's done that, right? So what can we do there? Lots of people have reached out and asked me if I've reached out to Mike Rowe. I haven't heard back yet. I've only reached out twice, so I will keep reaching out. But so there are other opportunities potentially to help at least offset some of the costs so that we don't need as much. And of course, when you're taking out a bond, it sounds like you don't have to take out the full amount. You're not going to take out the full amount at once. And so it'll come incrementally and it won't actually be the way that we've kind of imagined it for the purpose of giving some people some numbers.
Jody, when you were just mentioning the grant program, are you talking about the EDA grant program that only specific jurisdictions that were hit by natural disaster? Was that the one you're talking about?
I'd have to look it up, but
Okay.
probably.
All right, cool. Because I know that there's a lot of folks around Vermont that are looking into that, and certainly if there's a workforce development component, would be great.
Yeah.
To, combine efforts.
Yeah.
I have a basic question, a question to get us back to the basics, which is the enrollment number, because this is all based on expectation eventually of 500 students attending
450.
450 to 500. And I am wondering, other than your applications, which we saw from tonight, that for this year, you're close to that. How else could you confirm, just to confirm, because this is a really big piece of this is there a need for a building of this size and for year round, of course, day long is what I meant, full day school for 450 to 500 students. Can you confirm that with any other kind of data beyond what you're receiving in applications right now, especially as we think about declining enrollment in our schools?
I think about mostly we're looking at the application numbers, right? And also the rise across the country of interest in CTE. I know that I have two schools that would like to send to us. They're not in my region right now because state board rule has set those regions and it hasn't been updated for a while. And they may seek to go to state board and change that if this, whatever happens in the legislature doesn't change that, which could open the doors for even more students that are interested. I don't know
How big
how,
are those schools?
uh,
Are we talking deep units or?
no, they're bigger than that.
Yeah, okay.
And they're centrally near us. They're in that map of purple.
Mhm.
It's two of those towns didn't actually send us. Yeah, but Roxbury's down below, so it's like you just
Yeah.
fold them in.
Yeah,
those two towns.
So
Yeah, no, they're not.
They do not have a lot of students there.
No, but they, I anticipate that there might be another center nearby that we end up merging together.
Not a lot of centers in the I'm looking at the map.
Randolph.
Yeah, and, well, I mean, I'm looking at this map, which Roxbury is not in. When I'm looking at the proposed, regional new district regions, if
Oh, I
it's
see.
by, CTE. And as you go down this presentation to the bottom, it talks about proximity specifically, and it sort of shows a couple of towns that are currently part of the Randolph CT are very much closer to Barry. And so how these regions end up panning out is another question. Like if Northfield, say, is folded in, Northfield has a pretty significant population with an interest in CTE. I mean, just that question of what towns end up going to your center is completely unknown.
Right.
Because the current structure, if you're really gonna, if they're gonna go by that CET sort of
The CTE
framework,
map.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna morph a little bit based on proximity. And some of the towns that are currently served by some centers might end up moving to centers that are closer. And so, Randolph is sort of close, but like there's a big gap if you go west, right? And there's a big gap if you go east, and there's a big gap if you go north. So it's actually, who knows how it's going to go? I don't know that
Yeah.
that 450 is going to be representative of the actual towns that end up sending, especially when you're talking about a state-of-the-art facility that is attractive to a lot of kids, a lot of families, I would imagine. I mean, I'm curious how many people would have renewed interest when they're looking at a state-of-the-art facility that looks like that fly-through that we just saw. I mean, looks pretty nice. I think a lot of people their ears would perk up a little bit if they.
That's a
saw that
possibility. I
fly-through.
think Lynn has a question. I want to make sure she gets her question.
I've had people approach me about the project, and I didn't have a lot of information at the time, so there wasn't a lot I could say. Could you make sure that the meeting times are posted like on Front Porch Forum, or I don't know where you're planning to post them, but I think there's quite a bit of interest and there's concern about the cost. So I think it would be really helpful to have people informed about the thinking around the Career Center.
Yeah, I'm going to post on Front Porch Forum again on the day before our forum. And so that will have all of the dates and places where I can be. We have very limited posting on Front Porch Forum, unfortunately, because of the number of towns that we post to when we post.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. If there's other venues, though, we would certainly be open to that. We've been putting some brochures around and we have posters that we're going to try to put up one in every town. So we're looking for the bulletin board, speaking of board, the bulletin board that is like the most well seen in every single town that we can put that poster on. The town clerks have done a phenomenal job of posting to Front Porch Forum and sharing information. I've seen stuff on social media from them. I've seen the Front Porch Forum. I've seen in the Valley Reporter, the Waterbury Roundabout, Times Argus. So there's been a lot of postings and I'm hoping that people are seeing this, but yes, I will be posting on Monday morning to try to make sure that people see that that's available to them and all of the meetings that are available.
Thanks, that'd be great.
I just wanted to make one comment, is that none of us have a crystal ball, but in general, it seems like the state is looking for, I mean, we know they're looking for larger school districts. And I think that's going to be no different whether CTE is one district for the whole state or it becomes part of these larger districts. In my mind, can only mean larger catchment areas. You know, that there'll be more towns that will be sending schools to centralized schools, including if this new CVCC center gets built, which, yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, none of us have a crystal ball, but that to me seems like rather than it's staying the same, we know it won't stay the same, and I can't imagine it being restricted to less towns sending. It seems like the general direction that the state is moving in is bigger catchment areas, which means more students and defraying the cost over a broader group of people.
I have one other question because I think I was hearing you say on the programming that you're bringing back some programs. Is that because you know there's a need for them, or like how do you know you need to bring those programs back and then therefore have space for them in this new facility?
Every 2 years, we do a comprehensive local needs assessment. Jason has been part of that team all three that I've done it. Thank you very much. And so we are looking at data from industry, labor market data, but we're also looking at survey information from our current students and from all of our sending high schools, the students who respond, which hasn't been great. So I'm hoping they up that. This year, we up the ante on our comprehensive local needs assessment, partly because we have a lot going on. But we have consultants who are facilitating that process and they are doing stakeholder interviews. So anyone who's interested in that, please feel free to reach out and I can connect you with them, or Jason, you could also do that probably. And they're going to do interviews. They're going to do, the surveys are going to look a little different. We're hoping that means we'll get more feedback on them. But we're doing a deeper dive this year to make sure that as we move forward, that we are doing what we need to. But so far, that's what the evidence has said from what students are interested in and where we need to go based on labor market data.
Okay.
And state priorities.
Okay. Okay. I just thought of one more.
Yeah.
And that is a little bit more of a, like, thinking about the students. So if you have this facility and you're running a full day program, then students who would be going to MHS for part of the day at least, and then they are no longer, right, going to MHS. They are going only to the Central Vermont Career Center because you've got a full day program if they've been accepted, if they've applied and been accepted. One thing I think about is like the presentation just before you today is a wonderful example of the investments that we've made in our district to support the whole student. And I know that, again, no crystal ball, but what's the guarantee that students from Montpelier and Roxbury would have that same level of support and investment in them, whether it's multi-language or special needs or all the other things that kids were, we have put a lot of money into making sure kids who are unhoused are getting the support that they need to even just get in the door. Now, it's still a lot of work. We still have a long way to go. And I wonder about how those kids, if they want access to your programming, will be able to receive it.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of unhoused students in our programming already, and we have 40% of our students are on plans, which is higher than most of our sending schools. And we are able to support them. I haven't seen that we haven't been able to support the majority of those students. I think that you're coming to visit us tomorrow. We're excited to learn about that. We haven't had a lot of multilingual learners. We have in the past provided folks who are applying and or we thought we were gonna come in with translation through the application process and on the program preview day, for example. We've hired the translator to take our letters and make sure that they're accurate. Because in some cases, like if we're using Google Translate, for example, or something like that, it's just like the high level of a language and it's not the actual dialect from that region. And so making sure we use somebody who has those skills that can help us to tailor that message so it's sending the right thing. We have access for most of our curriculum so like cosmetology, we can get that in multiple languages. We can get NCCER, some of it in multiple languages. So looking at what programming can we provide to students that allows them to access it in their first language or the one that's most frequently used around them and with them. And there's more that we would have to do.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had a lot of experience there.
Right.
And so I would hope that we can collaborate with right now, you're still going to be the LEA. And so we need to be able to collaborate with the LEA, whatever that district is that we're in, whoever that is, to help figure out the resources that we need for the students that we are able to have.
Yeah.
And the building has been designed with support services in mind, so there's space in the building for that kind of.
The fly through didn't go through that.
Yeah, we
section.
didn't go through that, so.
It didn't show you the library. Yeah.
Yeah, it has all the, it has a library, it has office space for support services. It has a gymnasium, it has all the things to support that full experience.
Okay.
Those are all my questions. All right. Thank you very much for being here and digging into this with us, because
Thank you.
it would be a big investment of our communities. Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you.
Maybe I'll take that.
Could be. Okay, so I know we are running behind, but we do need to have this conversation this evening. The little bit of context here is that the committee that is currently tasked with coming up with the maps for redistricting has worked with the VSBA to draft a survey that they sent to board chairs, and you all have seen also you all got the memo on this survey. That they're asking for a response by October 6th. And as Libby, Jill, and I started going through the survey, we thought, well, there are some kind of technical and kind of formal questions we could answer, but one of them was, has your board taken a position, or does your board plan on taking a position regarding Act 73's redistricting requirements? And we definitely cannot answer that question without talking with you all about it. So, and it kind of forces us, in a good way, I think, to have the conversation about whether or not it makes sense for us to take a position. We do not, I want to be clear, have to actually take that position tonight. It's just a matter of whether or not we want to, and then we can figure out how we would determine what our position is. So those are two different things. Should we take the position in the first place, and what would the position be? We are not getting into the second one or determining the second one tonight. Folks might have thoughts on it, but just to help make sure our conversation stays focused. Does that make sense?
And it's specifically a position about the redistricting requirements?
I
of
believe
Act 73,
so.
Not just Act
I think I've-
73 or redistricting in general, it's about whatever the parameters are that are in Act 73.
A formal position on redistricting.
Okay, Okay.
No word requirement.
Has your school board taken or do you plan to take a formal position on redistricting?
meaning there are many boards who have written to the redistricting task force for public comment or offering public comment saying, sure, we'll redistrict, we want to stay a supervisory union. Or, yeah, sure, we'll redistrict, but only with these partners. So the question of the SGA wants to know is, are you all planning on making a comment like that? Don't all speak at once on that really complex question.
I'm wondering what would some of the potential options that would benefit our district be
Potential options of what?
of position? Like, given that there have been some boards that have taken positions, like, would it make sense for us to have a position? And if so, I'd love to know, because I don't, at this point, even know what the options are.
So I can take a stab at some of them. So, one piece I would recommend the board do, and this is coming from Libby's opinion, right? So keep that in mind for whatever it's worth. Is I would recommend that the board take an official position on a supervisory union versus a school district versus the supervisory district governance structure. And we can go into that in more detail. We could, I could do a presentation for the board to talk about all the differences if we need more information. But at, those basic sense, it's each school has its own school board. And then there's a supervisory board when you're in a supervisory union. The chief financial officer is making a budget for each of those entities and repeating work quite a bit. Supervisory unions can't own buildings. So there's a complete change in ownership. There's ramifications to that. I obviously have an opinion as to which one I would recommend the board take a stance on. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of advocates of more privileged stance who are coming from wanting to keep their supervisory union because a benefit of a supervisory union a lot of times is school choice. So, and
How? I'm sorry, can you explain that?
so a lot of smaller districts have supervisory union structures and do not have a high school. And so if you don't have an operating school, you can take your tuition dollars to whichever school you want to, including private schools, if that is appropriate, if that's the school.
If you're in a district, by definition, you have by school.
Yes.
I got you.
Yes.
Living I'm trying to understand the perspective of the districts who want to keep their districts with, with an overarching supervisory union. If there was a foundation formula, could it flow to the supervisory union and the school district would not set a budget, but would then receive some portion?
I would imagine that's how it would have to work, yeah.
And if that's what they envision, like.
I don't know. I don't know how it would work. I mean, how it works right now is they set the supervisory union budget first. And because the school district needs to know what portion of that they're paying, right? It needs to fit. And so my understanding is you do the SU budget first and then they do the school budgets next.
For their own district.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes sense to me. I'm just kind of imagining how you could even pull out foundation formula under that model.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's thought that through.
Okay.
That's the first time that's
Somebody
been
should.
asked. So somebody should, yeah, with really good knowledge of tax, education tax.
That somebody might be sitting to my left. Anyway, that's a good question.
But another way you could answer it, sorry, Tim, just so I'm not like one-sided here. Another way you could answer it is by saying we support redistricting, and we are interested in continuing our conversation with Washington Central. You could say, we're not interested in redistricting at all. We
Right.
have what did you call us, Tim? A small and mighty school district that's doing well by kids. You know, you could take multiple perspectives there.
And we would be deciding that.
Later, yeah, we're not deciding what the position is, and I would want to do some kind of community engagement for us to have a better sense of where.
We feel like, sorry, thank you, but-
Not in the next 3 minutes, no. I'm not even sure we're gonna decide in the next 3 minutes whether we should take a position. We're gonna see.
I think we should preserve the option. I think there's a lot out there and it's gonna impact this town and our students for a long time. And I think sitting on the sidelines doesn't make sense. And if we don't have to take a position now, and our position could be whatever, it could be. We support what the legislature's doing, seems like it's great.
Yeah, it could be a very general one.
Yeah.
Yes, it certainly could. Mhm.
I think we should definitely reserve the right and plan to eventually.
Okay,
And I think that's how you could answer that question. We reserve the right
Yes.
to make a position at any given time during the conversation.
yeah. Good night, Jim. Thanks for being here.
I completely agree,
Yeah.
especially looking at some of these maps that I'm seeing, which would separate Roxbury potentially from this district. Would be pretty devastating to me personally. I think it would be pretty difficult. It's been a challenging experience, and we've all put a lot of work into trying to do our best to make it work, and that would stick.
Don't we always have the right to take a position?
Yeah, we just want to make sure we're doing right by answering this question. You know, we wouldn't want to say, yes, we plan on taking a formal position if this board was hesitant in doing so. That's why we wanted.
We're adamant that we should not be taking. a
Sure.
position.
Yeah.
Right, we just wanted to have that conversation before answering this question and submitting this survey.
If the board wants to say, let's wait and see.
I think there are too many moving parts to take a position at this point. I don't want to take a position on it at this point.
Right, and we don't have to right now. We're just making sure that we're staying open to it. It says, do you plan to take is part of the question. So we are staying open to it.
I already talked. I think the answer to me, like logically, really is yes.
Yeah.
And the eventual position could be
We're gonna.
whatever the state does is fine, which is
Correct.
lame, but that could be the eventual. position.
It's not necessarily a bad position to take, but.
And it's gonna be our de facto position if we don't take a position.
Right. Okay, I think we have what we need
Yeah, I think so.
from
Yeah.
this group in order to make sure we complete the survey on time. By our deadline. All right,
Thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Framework to think about how to make that decision.
Yes.
We're not there yet.
We're not- we're not-
about it tonight, but I'm just thinking there's a lot of implicit. Things you're answering if you take a position, right? A lot, if you say we want to do X or Y or whatever. Necessarily making a lot of different value judgments, so.
Mhm.
And there's so much involved in it, so it'll be a fascinating discussion.
Fascinating is
At
a
the
word.
appropriate time.
Yeah.
Yep. We won't try to have 3 presentations / discussions at that board meeting, maybe just the one. I think that takes us to policy monitoring. So much like our consent agenda, we often move these just as a bulk, and of course, any board member can pull one out for discussion if they see the need. So I'll entertain a motion to move the monitoring reports for policies C1, which is educational records, B2, which is volunteers and work study students, and F4, which is access control and visitor management.
I move we accept those monitoring reports.
A second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next and final piece of business is that we have a first reading for 3 different policies. Can I turn this over to any member of the policy committee to just walk us through these briefly?
So these are required policies that we're currently missing. The language is almost exclusively from, well, I think it's from the Board of Ed in 2 out of 3 and 1 from the VSBA, I believe. There are no changes, and we have sought some feedback from administration about whether or not the language is accurate for what we're doing. We've heard that it is accurate for what we're currently doing. It sort of pull some of this, especially well, there are more policies that we're missing that will be folded into first reading at the next policy at our next full board meeting. But there's nothing in here that is different from what we were asked to write or to use as the policy language.
Okay. And these are new policies for students who are homeless, local wellness policy, and behavioral threat assessment teams. Okay. And just as a note of procedure, we have 2 more readings and then we warn them for a vote. Is that right?
No, we've always done it, but I don't believe we're required by law to do it.
Oh, okay. Okay. And the value of doing this at a board meeting like this is to make sure that we're sharing with the public what policies we're planning on passing, so we don't do it in secret. Okay. But there's no action for the board to take tonight.
There's not, nor do we expect there to be, which is also why we may not need a 3rd reading.
Right.
Sort of a 2nd reading may allow us to sort of adopt these policies.
Sure.
Because we've given the public an opportunity to weigh in if they wish.
Okay. Sounds good.
I think that's a really good question. Way back when I was on the policy committee, I feel like there was a conversation around just the language that's used, like homeless student versus student experiences homelessness, and I can't remember what, if anything, like how did we wind up with this?
This is the model policy. You're right. We try to use language that is student first.
Yep.
Students who are experiencing homelessness. 100%. So that would be a little bit of feedback that language could be changed. I can't imagine it changes the legal ramification of the policy.
I had the same question.
Is the policy committee meeting before our next board meeting? Do you have one on the? I think we have one on the- Oh, perfect. Okay, so that's something you can discuss and maybe make the change if it makes sense. Would it require another first reading?
So it doesn't change
That's what the, right,
Yeah, it doesn't change the content and you get it in the 2nd reading.
okay. Thanks for pointing that out, Scott. Any other questions or comments about these draft policies?
Thank you, Matt.
I think this is a good result from the VSBA audit. It was really useful.
Right.
To organize this work.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
All right. Is there a second?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Good night, everyone.